Hey everybody, my name is Rick and I'm here bright and early today to talk about one of the top 125 books that have ever been written. Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey, a book that I bought from the Folio Society, which means I paid way too much for it because this book drove me crazy. The elevator pitch for Oscar and Lucinda is a gambling addicted Anglican priest meets a gambling addicted Australian heiress who bets him that he can't move a glass church 400 kilometers. That is so weird and amazing that it totally had me hooked and interested in reading this book, but it is exactly why this book didn't work for me, because this book is so not about that. It's infuriating. This book takes 50 pages to talk about Oscar's childhood, which it probably should take 10. It then takes 50 pages to talk about Lucinda's childhood, which it should probably take 10. It then spends about 100 pages describing how Oscar and Lucinda independently got into gambling. That should probably take 50 max. So then we're at a point where 200 pages into the novel, it's a 400-page novel, so halfway through, Oscar and Lucinda finally meet, and that should have been done in the first 75 pages, I'd say. The wager about the glass castle doesn't happen for 300 pages. Like, as a writer, you have to know that this is the hook of your story. This is going to be how it's sold to people. This is how it's described to people. And you're not going to push it forward earlier in the novel to get people into this book that you want people to read. There are books that are written for other writers, and there's books that are written for readers. Oscar and Lucinda, to me, is a book that's written for other writers. Writers fucking love this book because they love his language, which can be pretty beautiful. They love his inventiveness. They love the structure. None of these things have to do with the majority of readers. Some writers pay absolutely no attention to the reader's process in this whole thing. How they come into it, how they're going to learn about the story, a little bit of what they expect, what people want, when they want it, the fact that readers like to care about the characters they're reading about. If you're going to spend 400 pages reading about two people, I would love to care about them, just a little bit. I don't need to like them, but I need to give a shit about them. I don't think Peter Carey gives a shit about the reading experience. I think he seems to think you should just be so effusive with your praise over his beautiful prose, and that should be enough. It's almost never enough. And part of the reason this is so frustrating is that this book is supposed to be like a great romance. Oscar and Lucinda is often recognized as kind of one of the great romances of the late 20th century. What are they talking about? It certainly would have helped if I was pulling for either of these characters, which I think I've made it quite clear I was not. But just where's the spark? Where's the intrigue? Where's the wit or cuteness, or where's the love at? Like, this was dull. Like, people's opinion of what love looks like and what's interesting about it vastly differs from mine, because this was boring. Sorry about this, by the way. I record these videos really early in the morning, and the sun is like directly that way coming through, coming through my blinds, and I literally have to kind of make sure where I'm sitting in the frame or this is happening. It's probably happened all the way through this video. I wasn't even realizing it. Oh. Peter Carey, to me, has this habit of creating these really interesting plots and peppering them with what appear to be very kind of dynamic characters, and then he completely fucks the whole thing up by his incredibly infuriating writing style. Plots that sound incredibly exciting are often just meandering and like tediously slow. I don't have a problem with unlikable characters. You see reviewers talk all the time about how I didn't like this book because there wasn't a single character that I liked. I don't care about that. I don't think you need to like a character to like a book. Sometimes the very purpose of a book is to have an unlikable character and then kind of peel away that onion. I don't mind that at all. But Carey's characters are just bland and boring, and kind of flat, which is especially annoying because the setup, or the elevator pitch of these characters, as I like to call them, are so interesting. A gambling addicted Anglican priest and a gambling addicted Australian heiress. How do they suck so much? I don't understand it. And then there are the just hundreds of bit players that come in and out of this story that feel like they mean absolutely nothing, and there's so many of them. You get the feeling that you should be interested in all these characters, or at least the vast majority of them, but I didn't at all. Who are you? I'm here for Oscar and Lucinda. The book is called Oscar and Lucinda. Why do I need to care about a fucking chimney sweep who's going to come in for 12 pages and then disappear forever? I don't care. This technique of having just dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of characters is often characterized as being Dickensian by people who want to put like a positive spin on this really shitty way to write a novel. And of course, this label is going to be put on Oscar and Lucinda because this book is written about characters in the 1800s. So it's got a Dickensian flair to it, which it absolutely does not. This does not feel like an authentic period novel in any way. Which, to be fair, Peter Carey agrees with. He described his book as a science fiction of the past. So it's technically a historical novel in maybe form and setting, obviously, but certainly not in its execution. In terms of what I did like in the book, once Oscar and Lucinda met and their gambling kind of begins in earnest, that was kind of fun, and that was really interesting. And the energy that they had there was infectious. But then, not too long after this happens, Oscar swears off gambling, which is the interesting part of the novel. Again, the writer doing the writer thing and not giving a shit about what the reader wants. He's getting rid of the one interesting element of his novel. Oscar swears off gambling because it's a sin, and then what are we here for? What the hell is happening? If you plan on reading this book, skip the next 20 seconds or so, because I'm going to spoil some stuff. It's at this point that Oscar stumbles off into the wilderness on a fool's errand. He becomes a laudanum addict, and then he impregnates some obnoxious woman and dies. What? It's one of these endings where, like, everything doesn't have to come up roses for me at the end of a book, but it should be satisfying. And the ending of this book for me just wasn't satisfying. None of this book was satisfying. Fuck, I hated it. This is a 400-page book that is broken into 112 tiny little chapters, which to me says that the book should kind of be propelled quite easily, but it completely lacks any kind of pace, which again could be blamed on the meandering nature of this novel. Every 3 pages you can be jumped to another story about a completely different person that you have no interest in and who's not going to come around other than the 4 or 5 pages that it's going to talk about them for a little while. There's plenty of foreshadowing and world building that's going on, but ultimately the novel feels directionless. Or maybe it actually feels like there's too many directions going on. Like, if you're going to plot out this novel visually, it's going to look like one of those walls where someone's trying to find a serial killer and there's just string going everywhere. And none of it makes any sense. You just look like a lunatic. Fittingly to its 2 protagonists, I would say that Oscar and Lucinda is a bit of a wager. The stakes are your time and whether you like to enjoy the things that you do. Whether the return is big enough is, ultimately going to be up to you to decide. But for me, this was a slog at best. Oscar and Lucinda won the Man Booker Prize in 1988. How it did that, I have no sweet clue. And it is on my 125 best books of all time list because it was named one of the 100 best books of all time by both The Observer and The Telegraph. Since this is only the second book of the top 125 books of all time that I'm reviewing here on this channel, you might not know why I'm doing this or how I got that number. I'm just going to put a link to that video below that explains why I'm doing this project, and it covers kind of everything you need to know about it. Thanks again for stopping by, you guys. I wish I liked this book more than I did. I only like to recommend books to people. I don't really like shitting on books just for the sake of them, unless it's Ready Player One. That book sucks. and I will talk about it forever. The next book on the docket for me in my list of the top 125 novels of all time is Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller, which hopefully goes a little better than this one did, but based on the first 100 pages or so that I've already read of it, probably not. That book is weird, man. That is some of the lewdest shit I've ever seen on a page in my whole life. If you've read Oscar and Lucinda before, if you've read any Peter Carey, if you have anything to say about my top 125 books of all time project that I'm doing, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to talk about it. If not, we'll see you next time.